In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Sunday Homily by Father William Hieronymus M.I. Chameleons. Today is the 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year A. For this Sunday, my homily is centered on the following theme, namely, taking off with God's thought and landing in His way to reach out to the unreached. The world in which we live is a world of advancements both in religious and secular fields. At the religious level, we have advanced so well that there have emerged lots of spirituality or spiritualism which, in the name of God or in the name of false simplicity and humility, either exalts oneself or devalues others. This spiritualism tries to answer many spiritual crises because it holds truth in pockets. At the secular level, advancement has taken place up to the level which intrudes the mysteries of human beings through artificial intelligence and nanotechnology. Religious or secular person goes beyond the ordinary, normal, special, and material and tries to unveil the mysteries of life and death. While going beyond, she tramples down the objective truths of love, dignity, justice, equity, and his or her thought, ways, and logic become very far from God's. In this way, human beings, both religious and secular, have become mean in their attitude towards God and other human beings. Humans play God to have control over the reality, and when they fail, they play human for the survival's sake. To depend on God seems to remove only the existential vacuum. To have connectedness with our neighbors seems to promote only self-preservation. Nietzsche's God is dead resonates in our attitude because we don't find meaning in His presence, for we are frightened of His will. Sartre's other is hell resonates in us because there is no room for the other in us, for the other seems to be a threat for us. If the other has a room in our life, we want the other to belong to our personal individualism. I, me, my, mine, myself, or collective individualism, we as ours, ourselves. In this context, many gospel parables of Jesus do not have any significance because we are far away from God and from one another. If so, how does the parable of today, the laborers in the vineyard, help us to listen to God, to have His attitude in us, and to treat others justly as we ourselves would like to be treated justly by others? The story narrated by Jesus in Matthew 20, 1-16 may sound to us as if it described a purely imaginary situation, but that is far from being the case. Apart from the method of payment, the parable describes the kind of thing that frequently took place in Palestine. The grape harvest ripened towards the end of September, and close on its heels the rains came. If the harvest had not been gathered before the rains broke, then it was ruined. And so to get the harvest in was a frantic race against time. Any worker was welcome, even if he could give only an hour to the work. So this is not a story, but it is a life incident of those hired laborers, the lowest class of workers who were paid one denarius. But what was being narrated by Jesus in the incident that the last hired ones were paid as same as the others did not take place, because no human landowner would do the way it was done by the landowner. Jesus' intention was to pinpoint the injustice done by the landowners towards their laborers and invite them to treat their laborers with a dignified wages that would help them to feed their family. Jesus is the mouth of God, who, as the landowner, does justice to the people who are oppressed and suppressed by the society. Jesus is the living word that people can chew and making part and parcel of their life. To be honest, all the more, to be honest, Jesus or his effort to bring justice of God was not accepted by then humans. To be honest, all the more, he is not accepted by now, the believers. Even if we have been trained in the school of Jesus for justice and mercy, and even if we have been eating his body and drinking his blood for many years. If so, how can the gospel passage help us to do an impossible thing when it is beyond our logic? In this context, the readings are a real help to do the impossible things. Accordingly, the first reading from the book of Isaiah 55 6 to 9 is a help when the prophet asks us to seek the Lord when he can be found. That is to seek the ways of God, to seek the logic of God, to seek the thought of God. And when we attain God and when we take off with his thoughts and ways, these will become ours. And then it will be possible for us to be different like God and to do different things as God does in the gospel parable of today. The second reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Philippians, chapter 1, verses 22, 24 and 27 is of great help for us because the life we live is for Christ. That is, our life should resemble that of Christ, for he did live a life entirely different from humans, a life according to the will of God. St. Paul is inviting us to lead the life of Christ before we go back to him after death. It is better to live, to adjust our life, and to have our ways, thoughts, logic, according to the gospel of Christ, according to God's will, while we are still alive. So the truth is, when we have Jesus in us, and when we adjust our life according to him, it is possible to do the impossible things. As the landowner in the parable